Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Hall of Fame session called Life After Full Sail. My name is Tim Gregory. I'm the Director of Academic Relations here at the university. You know these guests. You looked at their bios before you came today, so I don't need to talk too much about them other than introduce them to you. So Ric Viers, Nate Howe, Frank Scheuring, Daniel Corey.
Hello.
We'll give it up for them. Yeah. There you go. Yes. That was your appreciation cue there, so very good. So life after Full Sail. Each of you went through the education very similar to what these folks are going through. When you graduated, did any of you have a sense of anxiety about what you were going to do next? Who wants to jump in?
Yes.
Yes?
I would just say two things. Like when you start school and when you finish school, there are so much expectations that are placed upon you to, okay, right now, you're 18, 19, 20, whatever. You must know exactly what you're going to do with the rest of your life right now, immediately. Okay, when you're starting school, that means you have to pick your major and you have to start your career path that moment. Or when you're finishing school, that means you need to find that first job, which is going to be the dream job that's going to take you all the places you ever want to go. I just don't think that way. Everybody wants you to. I mean, that kind of pressure is put on you. But, take your time and think about it. At school, make the most of it. Make the most of your time here at Full Sail. You can, you can pick a degree course, but, make the most of your studies. You can diversify. You can, get to know your fellow students and find out what they're doing and get to know your faculty, make good use of the time. And, that first job out's not going to be a dream job, probably. But that's okay, chances are you've got time to figure it out. So that's what I learned.
Rick, how about you? Any thoughts?
I'll be honest with you, when I first came out, I was extremely bold and brave and ready to take on the world. And I was just like, yes, let's go get it. Let's go after it. I was extremely thrilled, obviously, with everything I had learned at Full Sail. And I honestly felt really competent about handling anything that was thrown at me. Now that I'm older, I realize that it was not really confidence so much as it was ignorance, because I was different. Most kids, they kind of freak out as soon as they graduate, then they kind of build up their confidence. Me, I was just like, yeah, I jumped off, and then I'm like, I can't fly. So, the first year wasn't so bad, but then, things weren't going as well, and then I absolutely hit a dip where I'm just like, whoa, what do I do? And then I just had to you just suck it up. You just push forward, Every journey that you go on is based on how many steps you've taken. But every single one of those steps are as important. If it's a 1,000-step journey and you take away one of those steps, then you're not going to reach your destination. Every single one of those steps are important. So sometimes you just got to dig in and fight your way out of the mess. And so I kind of did one of those things where I painted myself into a corner. I jumped into the industry, and it was my only way of making income. And when I wasn't making enough income, it caused me to get really creative about how I approach the industry and caused me to get more aggressive. So, yeah.
That's great. Nate, did you want to add anything? Or?
I felt a lot of similar feelings when I graduated. I was really just excited. I was eager to figure out what we could do and what was possible in the world, and felt really confident. One thing is, when I was a student here, and even after graduation, I really tried not to go right for the kill, not to get the dream job right off the bat. I really just kept my focus on the process and on the work and on building the portfolio and on growing my skill set. And I think that really helped me, because it's hard to go right for the kill of that dream job that you want. And you just kind of have to let it evolve and let some of the paths kind of present themselves. So when I got out, honestly, what I was excited to do was to make more things for my reel.
Mm-hmm. Good. Did any of you do an internship as soon as you got out?
I got, as I walked off the stage at graduation, I got a small paid internship at a place, and I lasted about 2.5 weeks, and I hated it. And it was, I thought it was going to be the dream gig, and it was far from it. Luckily, I'd been working with the career development and we had a plan, and I got my first full-time job soon after in Charlotte, North Carolina. But yeah, I took a very short internship before.
You said you hated it. Why? What did you hate about it?
I thought I was going to be in there making beautiful pictures and applying what I had learned. Basically I was in there just getting yelled at every day and not getting to touch anything. But I rolled up my sleeves. I didn't burn the bridge. I just had a better opportunity happen to land very soon after, so I jumped for it.
I kind of think of it as maybe a left-handed analogy. If one were to go work at a grocery store, and their entry-level job would not be store manager, you'd maybe be a cart pusher or bag the groceries or something like that. Why do you think so many folks, when they leave, are looking for that dream job or want to have that dream job? Frank, you got a thought on that?
I think they probably don't understand, even though it's pounded into their head daily on campus here and every time we come. I think they probably just don't understand that you have to earn your way up. You have to work your way up to get there, you know. Like when I graduated, I started a paid job 3 days later, but that paid job was doing video quality control. And I was an RA grad, like had nothing to do with sound.
Yeah.
But I was doing what I had to do and taking out the trash and cleaning the kitchen and assisting, you know, whatever. If you understand that no one's going to hand you a big pile of money and, you know, your dream gig, you have to earn that, you know. Leslie and Rick had a event earlier today that I stood in the back and listened, and Leslie and Rick both had great analogies of that. And it was like, you know, you're not just going to have a mountain, you know, the mountains, he can tell it better than I can because he did it earlier, but it was like it's made of pebbles, you know, you got to build it up, you know. And I think it was, the other one was, you know, pennies turn into dollars and dollars turn into millions of dollars. So it's just, you got to build it up.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, did you ever take a job that you thought was going to be your dream job and it wasn't your dream job? That ever happened?
I don't know that I ever accepted a job I thought it was going to be a dream job. But no, I've done some gigs that are pretty great because I've worked in comics, so you know, that's pretty terrific. But you know, thing is, when you are wanting to do things like if you want to put out a comic graphic novel with a major publisher or something like that, you're gonna have to do a lot of jobs to keep yourself afloat while you're doing that. None of those are gonna be dream jobs. So yeah, just be prepared for that. I don't know. What about you guys?
You know, I don't know. I guess the one thing I would say is that, you know, it's probably a lot of people come here and they fall in love with a particular art form as a consumer first. So, you know, music or film or games, you're consuming it, you're playing it, and then you realize there may be a path to be a part of it, but you don't necessarily have the knowledge yet, so you lock into the biggest position you see, or I want to be a film director, or I want to work at Pixar, or whatever it may be. But you don't really realize the craftsmanship and the work and the level of understanding that takes to get to the top of a very highly competitive field yet. I mean, the good thing is there's a lot of work in these industries. And the other good thing is there's a lot of people that aren't willing to go the extra mile, or, you know, aren't willing to put in blood, sweat, and tears into their portfolio. So there's ways to get in, and there's ways to make it. It's just when you're a student here and you don't have the full perspective of the industry yet, it's just a little simplistic, the view of like A to B. It's not really graduate and then, you know, work on the best film ever. Usually it's usually graduate, hustle, grind, network, connect, fail, try, and then finally get a chance. Maybe it doesn't work, and then finally make it back, and then you do it. So I think there's a lot more kind of grit, determination, self-evolution of your own craft that needs to happen.
You mentioned hustle.
Yeah.
There's an author by the name of Malcolm Gladwell he's also a theorist, and he talked about people needing to put 10,000 hours of work in before they really make it happen. He used the example of the Beatles, who spent years in Hamburg, Germany, and just playing these little gigs, and then all of a sudden they explode and they're worldwide heroes, and everybody thinks they came out of nowhere. Well, no, there was a whole lot of work that went into that. Do you feel like you guys did 10,000 hours worth before you hit where you wanted to be?
I think, if I remember correctly, the math works out to be 5 years at 40 hours a week is what, 10,000 hours, because I've heard that as well. And, what I tell people is, look, man, don't be in a hurry for the first 10 years. Like, seriously. If you graduate and you're 20 years old, wait till you're 30 before you really want to see success. Keep in mind, you can see success at 20, 21, 22, 23. So I'm not trying to limit you. But I'm just saying, don't be impatient, because when you're impatient, you make foolish decisions that you will regret later. You want to think level-headed and calm. So you need to dig in. You need to get the lay of the land. This is probably a good analogy for you to tell, but so Captain Hollywood over here is always playing poker with all these rock stars and Hollywood actors, so he gets to all these games and wins bazillions of dollars at these poker tournaments. But I'm assuming, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but a good poker analogy would be, whenever you're playing poker for the first time with somebody you don't know, you want to start monitoring the table, monitoring how the people play. You can't just jump into a game and nail your opponent,
right?
All right, because it's not just chance. You got to learn how the other player plays. So you kind of get acclimated to the room or to the table before you start really betting. And that's how your career is going to go. When you first get started and you first start getting your crew shirts and you start getting a couple of gigs, you're going to start to feel like John Wayne. Oh, you guys probably don't even know who that is. You're going to feel like Superman. Please tell me you know who that is. But you're going to feel like $1 million. You're like, yes, I own this. That's great, and that's great that it's giving you confidence, but there's still a lot more ahead of you for you guys to really kind of get used to the industry before you can start making those calculated decisions. So my advice is, don't be in a hurry. Treat every gig like it's your last gig and this is your time to shine. I still do that to this day. I've been doing this for 20 years, and every time I do another product or another sound effects collection or another video series, I'm like, is this the absolute best thing I've ever done in my life? Because if it's not, I scrap it and move to something else. So I'm constantly trying to outdo myself. So don't ever think you're going to get to a point where you're like, I've arrived.
Yeah.
You might, and it's very possible. Like if you get to be 300 or 400 years old, up until that point, you're always going to be growing. So don't be in a hurry to say, I'm there, I don't need to learn anymore. Constantly evolve.
There's a story that reminds me of the great novelist Kurt Vonnegut. His son was being interviewed, and they asked his son, what was it like growing up with a famous father? And he said, well, growing up, my father was a used car salesman that couldn't get a job teaching English at the local community college. He published his first novel at 48, so sometimes things take time, but it's not a bad thing.
I think you also have to just fall in love with the process of whatever you're doing. Certainly, like the industries they teach here have a glamorous side to them, have an exciting side to them, and that's good, and there's appeal to that. But really what you have to love is the process of whatever you're doing. If you're mixing records, you have to love mixing records. If you're designing and animating and creating whatever it is, you have to fall in love with that process. And by pouring your focus into that and then stepping back and being able to step back from your reality that you have right now and see potential paths, see the beginning of a potential opportunity, and to be aware of those things and to be more kind of vigilant and looking for opportunities while you're focusing on your craft. That's really the path to me. I mean, here we come to Hall of Fame all the time, and people always ask, how do you get a job? Should I move to this place? Should I move to that place? There's no step-by-step answer that applies to everyone. At the end of the day, you need to learn how to have situational thinking, recognize an opportunity, think through potential outcomes of it, put yourself in the best possible chance, make sure when you're there, you've got your card, your portfolio, whatever, ready to network and ready to shine and be the best you can be. And then in the in-between time, you just got to keep working on your craft and keep figuring out how to stand out, because at the end of the day, that's what you're selling.
Yeah. Life is a series of peaks and valleys. We have some great times and some challenging times. Was there ever a time when you were very discouraged early in your career? And if so, how did you pull yourself out of that and move forward?
And I've been discouraged. It's more times than I can count through my entire career, not just in the beginning. It's there's always going to be stuff that is difficult or disappointing or frustrating or whatever, and you just have to find a way to get through it. Like he said, fail and try again. It's just how it goes. I worked for the company I started for when I got right out of Full Sail. I was there for 12 years, and then they went out of business, and I was the last employee. And I'm like, I have 2 kids and a wife and a house, and what do I do? And it wasn't necessarily my failure, but it was, just scary, So I started my own company. That only lasted 4 years, and then I'm like, oh, that was me, But you always find another way, so.
I usually press on to the next project.
Yeah.
It's like, this didn't work out. What have I got next? Concentrate on that. I talked to a film executive once. They read one of my books, and he called me up on the phone to turn me down, which was really nice. He's like, this is great, but it doesn't fit with our mandate where we have, very villain-driven movies here. And, your heroes in every scene, villains not revealed to the end. Just, it's really great, just doesn't work for us. I'm like, well, thank you for the feedback. That's terrific. And I hung up with the phone with them, and I sat down on my computer and started writing something that was villain-driven.
Yeah, right.
That's how I handled that discouragement. Maybe that's unhealthy. I don't know. Is that dealing with it, or is that avoiding it? I don't know, but it worked out.
Well, and by taking action, that's a big thing, because it's really easy to just get paralyzed and to sit back and just to kind of, if you want to change your environment, if you want to change what you have in your life, the first step is to start doing things differently than what you're currently doing. And one thing that comes to me with the hindsight of graduating and now having my own company and going through a lot in between is when I was at Full Sail, I really felt like I knew everything and I see the whole world and I see how everything works. But the truth of the matter is, when you're here, you have so much of more of who you're going to become and what you're going to do that is unknown yet to you, and to have enough flexibility with your belief of how things work. It's easy when you're young and when you're in college to be like, oh, it doesn't work this way. This didn't happen. This didn't work. I'll never get this. But like, if you could just lighten that up a little bit and just kind of get open-minded to the different routes and different potential ways to break in, and then apply different actions and see what's working. I think that's so critical, because I meet a lot of students that feel very set in their belief that this won't happen, this does happen, it never works like this. And if you could be more open-minded, it allows you to find more creative paths into different opportunities.
Yeah, it's funny how life takes its turns, and none of us know where we're going to be in the future. When I graduated from college many years ago, I never thought I'd be sitting here with you guys today. I mean, that wasn't in the master plan, but now it's cool that I'm with you guys. But the point is, I wasn't planning for that, yet I was open to to those options, to be able to take advantage of that. So one other thing, and then we'll go ahead and open up questions to you guys, and that's about finances. Starting out, you probably didn't make a lot of money, but you were able to survive, and then when you're freelance, you're employed and then you're unemployed, and you're employed and then you're unemployed. And in the spirit of transparency, did any of you get in trouble with taxes and not saving enough money back to pay those taxes, or share something like that?
Yeah, be careful with 1099 jobs.
Yeah.
I had a minor scrape with it. It seemed devastating at the time, but now I look back, it really was a minor scrape. But when you have this much money and you owe this much, and you don't, it's hard. But just be careful with the 1099 jobs. Every 1099 job you get, have a savings account and put a portion of that away. I don't know.
It's critical.
You got to do
so
that.
Critical.
You gotta pay taxes on those
pay it.
1099 jobs.
On that note, my first job that I got in Charlotte out of Full Sail, I was making like nothing. I was an animator. I was 20 years old, made no money barely, just enough to do whatever. But when I went out to LA and I started freelancing, all of a sudden I started making in one day what I would make in 2 weeks. And I was like, wow, I'm rich. This is awesome. So cool. And so I went out and I like bought a bunch of stuff and like just like spent money because LA can be expensive. And I had no clue about taxes. Didn't, ever learn about that, never really paid attention to it. It was just like, cool, figured it was like my last job. And at the end of that year, I go meet with the person. They're like, oh, by the way, you owe X. And I'm like, X? I don't have X. What are you talking about? How am I going to pay X? I don't have that much money. I spent it on Gucci shoes. How am I,
You need those in LA.
I needed them. You need them in LA,
That's a business expense for me.
Yeah.
So it was like, I learned the hard way, and it was crazy, and I had to then really bounce back from it. But it's all relative. I mean, but having a solid financial plan and understanding is critical, because what you need to be focusing on is the creativity and the craft. And, you can't focus on the money. The money will come with doing great work. So you just got to keep your focus on the craft.
Yeah. Daniel, you had said kind of saving some money back. Do any of you have a plan that you follow that like 20% or 30% you just put aside and don't use, so that you have the ability to not get in trouble like you did on
If you
tax
get paid
time?
by electronic transfer, which is pretty much the way they do it now, you can set it up to where a part of the money will go into savings and then the rest will go into checking. We do that, my wife and I.
But one thing that I've learned, growing up, and like different things are important to me now, is that money is really a tool, especially when you own a business, to be able to work with great artists, to be able to hire people like you when you graduate, to be able to stay in the way of good things. So money is really, the value of money to me now is not so much of like, what are the things I can buy with it, but it's what can it afford me to create in the future? Or if I don't get a good gig, or if a gig doesn't work out, how can I hang in there and keep the people I want to work with around me? And how can I make sure that we have stability and the ability to create later? So I think about money a lot differently than when I got that first job that paid me well, and I thought it was just, shopping spree.
Well put, well put. So where's our stage manager, Elliot? Where's he? Are we good to go for some questions? Would you guys like to ask any questions? Is this thing on? Hello? Would you like to ask some questions?
There's one up here.
All right. Raise your hand there. We got somebody here in the front.
Sure.
For some of us at Full Sail who are a little bit older, who may have taken a little bit more time to decide to come here, does your advice about taking time, is there anything different or advice that you would modify that somehow? I'm 29, so it's just still
How old?
How old are you?
29.
Oh, okay.
I was 26, married with a kid when I was at Full Sail.
Oh, okay.
So, dude, as long as you're just working hard and and you're able to do it, and I mean, are you married?
No.
Okay. Well, then you're, in the same situation as the other people. Really, it's just there's no. It's harder for you because you're 29 instead of 19. It's. Yeah.
What program are you in?
Film. I feel like I have a lot to bring to the table with the years that I.
Sure.
That's the thing. I mean,
maturity.
Like, you're bringing more life experience. You're bringing more perspective. I mean, you have the ability to take school even more seriously than maybe somebody that doesn't fully appreciate the value of it yet. So for every pro and con, they probably cancel each other out. The thing that I don't think you can rush necessarily is still the process and the craft and what you're going to go sell when you get out of here to stand out and to get those opportunities. That's still the most critical part. I think you could, in a way, even jump some ladders quicker because you have more life experience, and maybe you can add more depth to your work and the way you market yourself and speak with somebody than maybe a nervous 19-year-old kid like me trying to get my first gig when I got out of here.
Yeah, and a lot of folks that what they call "quote unquote" non-traditional students, like, well, maybe have been to a 4-year university already, or maybe be in the military. So, regard that experience previous to here as feeding into what you're doing here. I mean, I went to 4-year school before I came here, and all that experience came together into what I do now. So, and everything's perfect. Just look at me
Every day.
But yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're good.
That's great. Anyone else? Who else? Got a question? Let's go in the front row right over here. Right there, yeah.
Hello, my name is Trevor Bethay. Just gonna introduce myself.
Hello.
I have a question. I'm trying to ask this the best way I can. So, if you have a somewhat submissive personality and you're in the industry, and let's say you get to a situation where whether working with a client or a company, and you feel like you're either being used or taken advantage of, how would you handle that where it's like not stepping out of line, but you feel like you should probably say something?
Now you're starting out? This is when you're first starting out, you mean?
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, maybe it's a generational thing, but I kept my mouth shut and just did what I was told. And I made sure that I did it with a smile. And, you know, the harder they push, the more I would love back. It's just, it is what it is. You know, you got to put up with it. You're never in a position to question the authority, especially when you're first starting out. Now, if they're asking you to do things that are unethical or immoral, and they absolutely stand up for yourself that moment, that absolute second. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to do stuff that you're not comfortable with. You're going to have to pay your dues, and you're going to have to work your way up the ladder. I think it was you that was talking about the grocery store. It's like when you start working at a grocery store, you're not going to be, you know, the head manager of the grocery store day one. You're more than likely going to be, you know, dumping boxes in the back, and you might not like it, and it's not the sexiest job at the grocery store. But at the end of the day, you got to work your way up the ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can use some of that frustration as motivation to continue to find how you're going to transcend it. And one thing that's tricky sometimes is when you're working for somebody that maybe has that viewpoint of you, it's very hard if they're not open-minded or if they can't see your value as it grows and changes. It's very hard to shift that mindset in somebody. So sometimes when I first started freelancing, you know, I was an animator and I was just an animator. I was starting to get a little bit of design, but I wanted to no longer animate and only be a designer, get more money and work on bigger opportunities. And the places where I was trying to do that, they laughed when I said it because they said, "You can't design. You're an animator." You know, because they just saw me that way, and so they would keep me doing the same things. So I left and I got other opportunities, and I walked in the door as a designer, and then they accepted it, and I got to go there. You know, so I think as you're building your own value, that'll change if you said you're like submissive or whatever. As you start to build more confidence with it, that'll grow. But I think what Rick said is really true, because like Leslie Brathwaite, that has like more Grammys than I have fingers, like, you know, he walked in and he was, you know, polishing the rims of like his boss's car without the boss asking him. And he walked in and he mopped the bathroom and cleaned the toilet, you know, and I think Leslie would probably still do that in his office if he saw it was dirty and somebody didn't clean, you know. So I think the mindset here is right, but continue to build your own value in your mind and look for opportunities when you need to jump ship and rebrand yourself.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, just trying to exceed your employer's expectations.
Yeah.
Because if you do a job well, you're not going to be in that position very long.
No.
They'll get you moved in someplace else. We have a question.
Yes. Earlier, Rick was talking about how he had to start playing more aggressively after a year of being overconfident. I was just hoping you could elaborate a little bit more on how aggressively you...
You know, I think part of it was similar. You get into financial jams, especially when you first start out, because I've never done this before. This is my first time being an adult. You know what I mean? So when that happened, you know, you don't manage your money right, or you get used to it being fat all the time, man. It's like, man, every month I'm like making bank, you know, and just like, you know, you go from making like minimum wage, then all of a sudden you see, you know, you're making in a day or in a week all the money that you would need in a month and a half sometimes. You're just like, all right, you start to go to Best Buy, you're buying nice TVs, I don't buy Gucci shoes, I buy these shoes, but I bought a lot of these shoes, you know, but you know, you start to spend your money because you assume, oh, it's always going to be here. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, you know, you go through a season where you find out nobody's getting work, and it's not just you, but then you're like, oh, what do you guys do? And they're always, you know, I would ask the other freelancers, guys that were older than me, you know, man, are you guys getting calls? They're like, oh, no, yeah, times are thin right now. What do you mean, aren't you guys freaking out? And they're like, well, no, we put away money for these kinds of times. And I learned, but you only have to learn that lesson once. That's one of those lessons where it's like, okay, now it makes sense. And I don't want to take up too much time, but it's like the illustration of the ant and the grasshopper, right? So when summer came around, the ants went to work. They started, going and gathering food and stuff and storing up for the winter and, making their homes and all this kind of stuff. The whole time that this is going on, the grasshoppers are sitting around with sunglasses enjoying, the sun and just having a blast, right? And they're laughing at the ants going, why aren't you guys playing and having a good time? It's a beautiful day outside. And the ants are like, well, we got to get to work. Meanwhile, ants keep pushing. Winter comes along. All the ants go below the surface to where they've got all their prep, their food and all their preparations, and the grasshopper dies on the surface. Why? Because they weren't prepared for lean times. And somebody told me that, and I'll never forget it. And when I first started freelancing and I've seen my first winter of, there's not a lot of work going on, I learned real fast. It's great to have, thousands of dollars that you didn't need, just stick it in a bank somewhere. Leave it there. Mm-hmm. Don't spend it. Save your money. And I tell this every time I come here, man, stay out of debt. Yeah. Replace the word debt with the word imprisonment or bondage. Like literally get that brutal with the word so that it's clear to you. Listen, if you're borrowing money you don't have from someone else, you owe that person that money back plus interest. That's a debt. That's chains. Keep the chains off of you as long as humanly possible. If you cannot afford to pay cash for it, don't buy it. Period. Because it will eventually catch up to you. Once, like I said, give yourself 10 years. Get settled in. Get the lay of the land. Understand how your life is going to work before you start to go out and buy the Gucci shoes. But you know what I mean? You would probably do it differently then. You would still buy the Gucci shoes, but you would just wait until you were a little bit more comfortable. So it's hard because when you first get started, you're all excited. When you first get started, you're all excited and you start to see success and you start to see money and you think, oh, it's always going to be here. No. Nothing is always summer. There's always seasons to life. So you're going to go through lean times and you're going to go through fat times.
That's great. Let's take a poll here. Who in here does not have any cash on them? Just be honest. Okay. And using your debit card probably most of the times? That's right. Do you ever find when you do have cash that you may be less likely to spend that? It's very easy just to take the debit card and go, doesn't even feel like you're losing any money at all. But man, when there's cash, I'm always hanging on to it. So great words of advice from
If I could throw it out there, recently, the last couple of years, I actually started using cards more often just because I like managing my money that way. I will say this. Every single one of my credit cards get paid off in full at the end of every single month. So the only reason I'm using credit cards is because I can rack up the frequent flyer miles, the points. But on top of that, it's quicker to pay just one bill versus 10 or 20. But that said, I've got apps for all of my cards, and I'm constantly monitoring what I'm spending. You know what I mean? I can spend way more than I do, but I don't, so that I can have way more later. Does that make sense? So I give myself a budget. I give myself, hey, look, keep it around this amount, and I'm constantly monitoring where I'm at, especially when I'm traveling or whatever, how much am I spending and all that stuff. And I would encourage you guys, especially when you're starting out, get used to monitoring your money on a day-to-day basis, because if not, you get to the end of the month and you're like, holy cow, there's $800 more, than I thought I was going to spend, but I'm only making $400, $500 a week. That number becomes really huge. It could be $10,000. You know what I mean? It's money that you don't have. So just constantly keep an eye on your money. Don't let it run away from you.
Yeah, I look at mine every day because you never know when somebody's going to get your number and take cash from you. Somebody did that to us, and never again. So you gotta keep track of that. There's bad guys out there. Who else has a question? Who else? Yes. Let's move over here.
What do you say to the people that are leaving Full Sail and are trying to graduate right now that want to create their own business right out the go?
Make room for other work, while you're doing that. I mean, don't be afraid to even consider a 9-to-5 job. I worked in broadcast news for 8 years. I worked in broadcast news transcription while I was forming up my comic book business, and that's how we kept the lights on. So, I'd say it's not bad to think about starting a business, but take your time with it and have some real income. If you're what's your field? What's your
game design?
Games. Okay. So there's a lot of different jobs you can get at a gaming company. You know, I mean, you're not going to go in and be the lead artist or the coder right off. You know, maybe you can answer phones at the front desk, and that's your 9 to 5 while you're working on your own personal games at home. It's nothing wrong with that.
You know, I don't like the idea at all, and I'll tell you why. I own my own business, but I freelanced for 12 years before that, every day of the year. I mean, except for like holiday breaks or whatever. Never lapsed in booking. I worked at so many different studios all across the world and saw how people did business in great ways and in ways I didn't care for. Learned a lot of nuanced things that I didn't even realize I needed to learn. Absorbed things that I wouldn't even have known to pay attention to. So my problem with the idea of starting a business right out of school is really simple. When you're first getting out of school, you're taking a skill set that is fairly new, and now you're going to do it under extreme pressure in highly competitive fields versus well-funded competition. And you're going to have to perform that service that you're selling or that product that you want to create with a game under this pressure as you're still learning a lot of the tricks and tips and things like that. And the thing is when you run a business, like, you know, I own a business. A lot of your day is not making games or, for me, designing. A lot of my day is running a business. And that is an entirely different skill set in many ways than, you know, making music, creating designs, making games. That's a whole nother art. There's people that just go to school and sit in panels like this just to learn how to run businesses. So my concern is you start doing two things at once and you're not experienced yet at either of them potentially. So unless the product that you're selling can compete on a world-class level against the best games in the world in a very crowded market where apps and the major kind of, you know, the Steam store and the major consoles have millions of dollars and teams of hundreds of people behind it. And sure, you get those breakthrough 1-2 guys made something. That certainly could be you. I personally, if I would do it over again, I would do it the same way. I'd go work for a lot of people. I'd gather insight. I would take notes. I'd be learning about business. I'd be getting my money ready for the fact that the beginning of your business, you're probably not going to have money just chasing you down. So I would build up a war chest of cash. I'd build up my knowledge. I'd build up my partnerships. I would get my team in place of people and a support system that'll allow my business to run and thrive so I can focus on making the best game I can make. If you try and do that all while you get out of school and then you still got to pay rent, I think it's going to be a very stressful experience, and I think you're going to miss some valuable experience working at bigger places.
It's hard and it's challenging because when you first graduate, you feel, you know, like you could take on the world. You feel like Superman, but you got to take time to realize that you guys have an incredible amount of knowledge, but you got to get used to putting that knowledge to work. So, for example, think of it this way. Let's say you spent the last 4 years learning about the guitar. You haven't played the guitar, you just learned. You've watched the videos, you understand the books, the whole 9 yards. Now we put a guitar in your hand. Are you going to play like Jimmy Page the very first time? You've been studying it for 5 years.
No.
Well, no, you're going to still have to figure out the fretboard, and then it's going to take time to play. Does that make sense? So you got to kind of grow into it. It takes time to develop the skill, like he's saying. And I did the same thing. I was fortunate in that my dad owned his own business when I was growing up, so I got to see a part of that side. But even still, I mean, I freelanced for years as well before I started my own business. And let me tell you something, there's a lot of things I can show you in my businesses that are a direct reflection of people I freelanced with. I'm like, I like the way that they did that. That made sense, and I'm going to use this. So I had an intern once. I'm not going to name who it is because they're a great person, but when they first graduated, they graduated valedictorian of their class and all that stuff, and so they came in and they were kind of being mildly cocky, not too cocky, but a little bit cocky about, you know, the fact that they were valedictorian and they just got out of school and they were the king of the earth. And I said, listen, let me make this perfectly clear. Yeah. Let's say that you've got a tumor in your brain and you've got to get operated on today, and you've got 2 surgeons to choose from. The one is valedictorian, just graduated yesterday, A+ though, in all of his classes, you know, GPA's through the roof. He's never really used the knife before. And you got another guy who was a C+ student, but he's been doing this for 20 years. Which guy's going to cut you open? Oh, well, the guy's been doing it for 20 years. And I just kind of winked, and he went, oh, I get it. And I'm like, it takes time. You got to develop the skill. Understanding it and knowing how to use it is 2 totally different things. There's reflexes and things that, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Intuition that comes along with just doing it naturally versus reading about it.
And there's nothing to say that you shouldn't go get a gig and then in your spare time be building your company up, getting it ready to function, trying things out, sending feelers out. I mean, you should be doing that, but why not do that while you're getting an education, continuing education, at an internship, at a paid position? You're learning their processes, you're making notes, you're seeing what's going on, you're networking. I mean, there's Chance Glasgow and Albert Perez here. And, you know, Chance made Call of Duty, right? So that's a pretty big credit. And what happened when he was there? He met all these other people. And now what is he doing in his life? He's starting his own company. And he's doing it with people that he met at these other places. And now they have a team that's assembling that is extremely talented. And they're at a position in their life where they have capital and finances to be able to try some of these things in a real earnest way that gives them a shot of getting clients and getting work. So there's no reason why you shouldn't start it, but I think you should also not miss the value of working for somebody else to begin.
Okay.
You guys are sharing some fantastic insight. I appreciate it, and I know all of our guests here do too. Let me ask one question real quick. We'll go back to our students. If you were, say, at orientation, and you were standing in front of 300 brand new students, what would you say to them?
I would say get curious and try a little bit of everything. The school is absolutely unbelievable. They don't pay me to say that. It's crazy. You walk around here, there's so many passionate people, so many people, you know, so many great pieces of equipment, passionate people trying to learn it. You're surrounded by people that all want to get into similar types of things. And when I was a student here, I wish I would have networked with more kids outside of my degree. You know, I wish I would have went into labs and just kind of sat in on other sessions. I think if I was to speak to myself in that era, I would say, like, just lean into everything, try everything, introduce yourself to everybody, show up at every single thing they have, because why not? You're paying to be here, and this is a place, when you graduate, there's nothing else like it. There's no point in your life where you're going to be in a room with this many people all trying to make it in some form of the entertainment business. So, like, I mean, talk to everybody. The other thing is when you get your first gig, it'll probably be somebody you meet in the hallway. I mean, my buddy Chris Kelly that's flying here right now, he's a big shot at Google, and he gave me my first opportunity to sub in when he was traveling on a freelance gig. It's how I got my first thing. He wasn't even in my class. First day of school, I went up and I introduced myself to him. So I think lean in, get curious, try a little bit of everything. Don't be afraid if you're here for music and all of a sudden you like film or vice versa. Go try it, go experience it and explore and be open-minded.
Yeah, open-minded is the very important thing. You know, you come in with expectations of how things are supposed to be, maybe, and you'll get surprised when maybe your focus shifts, or this thing that you thought you loved, maybe you don't love it so much. But you know, be open-minded, and yeah, I would just repeat everything Nate just said. Just. And don't be afraid to, I've been saying this over and over again the last few days, don't be afraid to diversify within what you do. You know, there are so many different types of jobs within music, so many different types of jobs within gaming. You know, everybody wants to do the one particular hot thing. Everybody wants to do one particular hot thing in film, but you know, maybe you'd be a better cinematographer than a director. You know, maybe you'd be a better lighting technician. You know, I mean, there are very successful gaffers in Hollywood that own big houses just because they are so good at being gaffers. Did anybody think that would be the thing that maybe they would be the master of when they came to school here? So just be open to it, because there's that thing that maybe not everybody else wants to do that you're the best at.
Yeah, I would say look around the room, because you're looking at the people that are going to be your competition or your client, you know, or someone that you hire. Because even no matter what program you're in, if you're an RA and you know the film people, you know, you could be doing sound effects for a movie. You could be, you know, whatever, in audio post, and you're working with this guy who was the director in the film and video program. Or you're doing sound design for a game, you know, for somebody from game dev. Or you're doing graphic design for whatever, you know, these people are the people that are your age that you're going to be coming up with, you know, throughout your career, and why not develop your relationships now? And even not the people just in your month, the people in the months before you. So because by the time you graduate, they've already been out. And if you know them, you can call them. Hey, I'm moving here. Can you help me out? You're already developing that relationship.
Yeah, if you're going to be making a big move like to LA or whatever, having a group of people you want to go with, that's having a unit. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do we have another question? Yes. Right here.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks, guys, for coming to speak with us. And my name is Patrick. I'm a web design development student here. I have a question that kind of talks about the point you talked about, Nate, on enjoying the process.
Yes.
Someone that I listen to is Marcus Lamont, and he always talks about trust the process.
Yeah.
However, there's moments where you have to pivot.
Yeah.
My question is, when do you recognize those moments, and how do you have the courage to actually understand that this is the point where I do have to take that pivot?
Yeah. Well, so Marcus, one of the things that I feel like he's really good about in business and everything that he speaks about is he's able to distill something down to what really matters. So when you're in business, when you're in a creative process, when you're working for somebody, even when you're in school, it's really easy to get overwhelmed with, well, I got to think about all these 150 things. Do you really, or is there really just for that day at least one thing that really matters the most? Or Marcus, when he works with a business, it's like, what is fundamental to our cash flow and what's happening there and what's driving it, what's preventing it, what's limiting it, and let's just talk about that. And when you know what matters, that empowers you in so many different ways. Knowing what matters and getting the tone and the heart and the focus right is so critical in creativity. So you can create things that really look right off the bat and connect with somebody, but it's critical in your own growth and your own decision making, running a business, and each one of you are running a one-person business to start with of your future, and so knowing when to pivot really comes down to knowing what matters. So it's a tough general question to answer because I can't get into why you should pivot based on your situation, but it goes back to that thing about having situational awareness. So right now you have a reality in front of you and your perspective is slammed up against your eyes and you're only here in this moment of what's going on in your world. If you can step away from that a little bit, try and get some perspective. What other opportunities are here? Why would I think about pivoting? What risks are there? And the thing is don't be afraid and don't get analysis paralysis where you get I'm going to think about this 700 different ways, but I'm too nervous to make a move. Go actually try and make some shifts and keep adjusting your course. So knowing when to pivot doesn't always mean well, now I got to do a 180. For instance, if you're working in, I came here and I studied animation and I wanted to do visual effects for film. I met a kid in digital media, DAD, and I was like, wow, that stuff's really cool. So instead of pivoting 180 degrees, I was like, I'm just going to shift my focus a little bit and kind of, it's not like I need to scrap everything. I'm going to take what I've learned and start kind of blending it this way. Let me put that back out into the world. Am I getting any positive feedback? Am I getting any new leads from that? Is the market buying that? Are people reacting to it? Yes. All right, let me dive in a little deeper. Let me keep pivoting. And so it's like, molding something. It's always changing, and you keep adapting and keep shaping it. And you could look at your reality and the things that are happening to you, and you could say, what is the feedback I'm getting on what I'm putting out into the world? And you could use that as a test. Am I getting what I want here, or do I need to shift? Do I need to take some action to create something different? I don't know if that answers it, but
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much.
all right.
And I'm going to start calling Nate for advice.
Oh, kidding.
I love being on panels with him because I can sit there. I'm learning as much as everybody else.
Can I ask a question?
Who else has a question? We get over here.
Hello, thanks for being here. My name is Dang. I'm from game design, and I was wondering, what are some of you guys' work ethic?
I'm sorry, say again?
Work ethic.
How do we describe it?
What's make you get up every day?
My alarm clock. I think work ethic is a lot of things. I have the work ethic of give more than I take. Because you'd be surprised what people are willing to give back if you're just constantly giving to them. If I am never late, I am always early. never on time, always early. If there is any chance of me being late for anything, the person that I'm going to notify that person way ahead of time. If I'm meeting you for dinner at 7 o'clock and I'm going to be running late, you'll know about it by about 6:30, 6:45 at the absolute latest. But hey, man, and if it's late, it's not my fault. Sorry, my car's on fire, or something crazy that's beyond my control, or traffic. But I'll give you a heads up. The thing is that you really got to treat the other person better than you would treat yourself. And that goes to your coworkers, to your employees, your partners, your distributors, whatever part. You just treat people with respect. And I said this earlier when I was with Leslie today in the other event, which is this: if you want to be the king, you got to learn to be the servant first, right? And so when you have a client or a customer or a fan base or whatever it is you're dealing with, man, you've got to make them feel like the king, right? You've got to serve them. And so I've always went into it with the mindset of, man, I'm here to make. I always tell people when I would first starting to freelance with them, I'm like, look, let me define who I am. Don't forget, don't think of me in terms of what role I play in your production. Think of me as a bottle of aspirin. You got a headache? Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I'm not going to sit there and ask you how to take care of it. That's not your problem. Your problem is to know that I'm going to take care of it. I used to tell everybody, I'm your bottle of aspirin. I'll take care of your problem. And you'd be surprised how that's the look they'd give me. Like, all right, well, cool. I don't have to worry about that. Rick's on it. And it didn't matter if I was qualified to answer or to fix the problem or not. I'm qualified enough to use my head to figure out a way out of the problem. Yeah. So I don't need to be told what to do. I just need to be told what the goal is, and I'll make it happen for you. So, be proactive, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I was just going to, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say, honesty it distinguishes you. Like, I live in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, and trust me, if you are honest, people will remember you, because there's so many people that aren't honest. So many people lie to get ahead or whatever. But if you're that one honest person, then you will be remembered. Even if your honesty causes you to fall short, it will cause you to come out ahead later. So,
I'll tell you, I was raised by Depression-era parents. And when I was young, my dad said, if they call you into work, go into work. If they ask you to work overtime, you work overtime. If they ask you to work 40 straight days, you work 40 straight days. Yeah. And I've tried to live by that my whole life, and I'm still working here. So
that's great.
So it really made an impact on me, and maybe think about that from time to time.
Yeah.
And it'd make my dad proud too.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Who else has a question? Anybody else? Got another one here in the front? Okay.
Trevor again. Hey to everyone here too. So the question I had was, it's kind of bouncing from what Nate said, and Tim already kind of gave one. The pivoting thing. So I'm in DAD now, but I'm also an aspiring comic book artist. It's kind of what I want to do since I was little. So Daniel, if I haven't been a fan when I came in, I am now. Tim gave a good quote that he lives by based on his father. I was wondering if you guys had quotes that, you wake up and this is just something that keeps me going, that you guys live by on a regular basis.
I have one that I've written on my desk, and I look at it every day, and it's saves me a lot. And it's simple. It just says, winners respond, period. And the thing is sometimes when you run a business, there's things that you really don't feel like dealing with, but you have to. And sometimes in life, there's like challenges that are going up, and you kind of dread. You're like, I don't even want to go to this meeting. I don't want to do this part. I don't want to write this email back. I don't want to deal with whatever. And so I wrote on my desk that winners respond, and it just makes me think that every time, like he just said, they're calling me in to do something, winners respond, let's do it. Let's go, and let's do it 100%. So I like that because it's just simple, and it's just action-oriented. And I know that when an email pops in, if my first instinct is let me sit on that for a little bit, or let me just kind of like push this aside and hope it goes away, or this or that I can't do that. I have to respond. So that's my personal thing.
Okay, cool.
I chant on a constant basis. And when I say chant, I don't mean sing. I mean I do positive affirmations all the time. Every day in the shower, as I'm getting ready, I'm just constantly programming your mind, right? Or programming my mind. And one of the things I constantly tell myself all the time is I can do anything I want. I bet you I've said that a bazillion times in my life. I'll say it all day. I can do anything I want. Obviously, I'm human, so there are limitations, but my brain doesn't know that because I've kept telling myself I can do anything I want. So when somebody comes up to me with an absolutely outrageous thing to do, I'll be like, yeah, we can figure that out. I don't know how we'll figure it out, but I can check I can do. You know why? Because I can do anything I want.
Yeah, I love it.
And I do. I'm like, I can do anything I want. And you start to build up confidence that, yeah, you can. If you think about it, guys, you can do anything you want. You just got to be convinced that you can do anything you want. So I just sit there and I convince myself all day long, I can do anything I want.
That one thing that I just want to chime in with here, because you spoke about starting a business, and then a few points now, Rick has mentioned that he doesn't really ask the client for like how to get from A to B, and there he was just talking about how he can do anything he wants, and there's a level of understanding and nuance and sophistication to Rick, I like to think. No,
I'm really seriously, you're the first person to ever call me sophisticated.
No,
Thank you.
but the truth is, like, a lot of new students, when they get an opportunity, they start asking so many questions about it, and it's fine to ask questions, but they start asking the client or the person paying so many things that's almost, they start doubting if you can even do the job. And so Rick, with that mindset, not only is it empowering because he could do whatever he wants, he can make anything happen, but when a client comes to him with a challenge, because that's his mindset, he's not, oh, well, how am I going to do that? Oh, well, this is too hard. Oh, what are you even asking for? You know, he hears it, understands it, and then takes action and makes it happen. And that's why people come back to him, and that's why he is successful and owns his own business, you know, because he takes that action and it makes it happen.
I can tell you this, man, 20 years in doing this, I've told every single person to ask me, can you do it? I always say, yep, I can do anything I want. I tell you what, I've painted myself in a corner a bazillion times. I've never gotten stuck. And I've said yes to some pretty stupid things. But you know what? I always figure out a way to get it done early and under budget. I have never once, ever in my life, ever went to a client and said, you know what, I need a little bit more. I wasn't budgeting. Never once. And there have been a couple of times where I probably had to put more time into it than I originally anticipated. The clients have no idea.
Yeah.
Because I don't charge them more. You know what? I told you it was this amount. I stick to my word. It's done. It always gets done on time as well. So it's just a matter of if you've got the mindset that I can do it, then eventually your brain will follow suit.
Cool. That's great. So Elliot's telling me that we've got to wrap this up, right?
I
don't really have.
Oh,
I don't have one that I can say, I think.
I not a quote, but like just a daily thing. And it's not something everybody does that I pray constantly. But the important thing is just to remember it's not a monologue. You have to stop and be quiet and listen. But yeah, that's my thing.
That's very well put. So I'll ask one more question and we'll end this. We talked about orientation. Let's go to the end of the ride. If you were standing in front of 100 graduates at graduation, what would you share with them?
You can be one of two things in life. You can be a thermometer or you can be a thermostat. Okay? A thermometer reacts to its environment. A thermostat changes its environment. There is nobody in the world out of 7 billion people here that is going to make a bigger impact on your career than you. And it's all in your hands on what happens. Nobody else is responsible. It's on you. So you got to make a decision of whether or not you're going to accept the world as it is, like a thermometer would, or whether or not you're going to say, I can do that, and be a thermostat and change your environment.
Love that.
Did it sound rushed? I practiced.
It was really good.
Freaking awesome.
I was in the mirror all day. I can do this.
I love it.
I would say no one's stopping you but you. You know, no one's gonna keep you from achieving your dream except for yourself. You're the one that has to get out there and work your butt off and do what you need to do to get to this stage so you can work your butt off to get to this stage so you can work your butt off to get to this stage. You know, you might have obstacles, people that are obstacles, but no one's going to stop you.
Yeah, complementing that, I would just say your expectations are often what gets in the way. And back to what Nate was saying about being open-minded, just be open-minded and know that there are things that you can do that you probably haven't thought about yet. And there's just opportunity everywhere.
It's an interesting time at graduation because big chapter of your life is closing and a new one is beginning. So, naturally you have a sense of accomplishment and closure of this place, and you feel like now you're done and you're ready to, go get your rock star job. I think it's remembering the patience and remembering the perseverance needed to really make something big, and to lean in and to not give up and to keep trying even when you're knocked down. And I also think a lot of people graduate here and they feel like, all right, great, I got my portfolio of whatever degree I'm in, so now go get me my job. And it really doesn't work that way. I think when you get out of here, it's like, okay, now I can finally take a step back, reflect on everything I've learned, and hopefully in half the time make almost a brand new portfolio that's way better than anything I could do back when I was in the rush of school. So I would tell myself when I graduate, when I was a graduate, I would probably tell myself, go get back on the computer and make your portfolio better so you can get ahead faster.
Well, Rick, Nate, Daniel, and Frank, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
You guys.
Thank you.
Each of you are an inspiration to all of us. Thank you for your generosity.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
hosting.
Thank you for having us.